What is up, ballers? In the house. I see you guys. What is up, Paper Bag Man? And what's going on, Yo-Ya? How's it going, guys? And we also have our friend here, Jeremy from AnEarful Blog. What's up, Jeremy?
Hey.
What's
am
our
here.
What is ballers? Thank you for joining us on this fine Friday evening. Hit us up in the chat, say hello, and tell us what the last record you bought is, and we'll comment on that as we go along. And also, if you're watching this on the replay, thanks, man. And Jeremy has a wonderful blog called An Earful Music Blog, anearful.blogspot.com.
Now at StreamYard.
Oh my gosh, on StreamYard.
I mean, not StreamYard, cool. Substack.
Substack. Oh my gosh, dude, it's still on Blogspot.
That's my archive.
When I Google it, that's what comes up.
Well, so that'll take time, but it's anearful.substack.com.
Substack. Maybe we can change. Maybe I'll hold on. I'm going to change that. Yeah, so in any case,
anyway, it's there.
Earful.substack.com.
And of course, you can find me on X, Instagram. Did I just say X? Darn it. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok.
And earful.substack.com. Is that right?
Bingo.
All right. And we're talking tonight about bands that died. Meaning they like died, they self-destructed before their time, in a sense.
Yeah. And I think my criteria was that all the band members had to still be alive, and they just stopped making music for a variety of reasons. And
often in their prime.
Yeah. And when I was thinking about this, I thought the primal wound of the Beatle breakup is kind of like the meta version of this. Because when you think about it, before the Beatles, did anybody cry when Ben Webster left the Duke Ellington band?
Yeah, right. Seriously.
I don't think so. I mean, maybe some people were sad that he wasn't on stage anymore, or Jimmy Blanton, that was the great Blanton Webster band that Duke Ellington had. There were these bands, but everything was much more fluid. And then the Beatles became these four guys. And as I've written before, they sort of represented the best of humanity when the hope for unity of purpose, for love between four people like that. It just kind of animated the world in a way. And I grew up in a Beatles household, and I felt that it was almost like helium in our apartment. The Beatles brought everybody together. They made everybody happy. And then there was that moment. I was five or six when they ceased to exist. And some air definitely left the universe at that moment. And I think that's so whenever another band breaks up, you're sort of reliving that trauma.
Yeah, and it was
going away.
I mean, and they had given us so much, already with all their records, but it was, I'm sure at the time, it was hard to imagine them not being that Beatles not releasing records. It was heartbreaking, probably, for fans.
I think so. And when you think about the early days when people thought they would last 6 months, and then it just seemed like they would last forever and keep going and going. We know there were troubles behind the scenes. It was difficult. People wanted to break out and do their own thing. So they probably made the right decision. But I still think anytime another band breaks up, it kind of like hits that nerve again. But
yes. It does. And I mean, it seems like a lot of the breakups that you see following on the heels of the Beatles, for bands that are extremely talented, particularly, it mirrors the breakups of the Beatles in some ways. And so we could talk about that as we go along here. Like, for example, double. That was at the Smiths. By the way, I'm going to say, let me hold on. Before we do the Smiths, let me do this in the proper way. It's not insane. Because I want to say hello to Captain Love Handles, who's in the house. and also Paper Bag Man says the last record I recall buying was Captain Copter and the Whirlybirds. I don't know what that is. Is that
Nor
have
do
you heard
I.
of that? But I want to hear about it, Paper Bag Man. And yes, we've got Dennis in stereo. All right, hold on. So I was gonna say, like the Smiths, right? Hold on, ballers. Like the Smiths, and I mean, in this case, it really was Marr and Morrissey who were at odds primarily, and but in a sense, Morrissey versus the world, Morrissey versus the rest of the band.
Yeah.
Because even though, it was sort of like Andy and Mike Joyce, Andy O'Rourke and Mike Joyce would go along with what Morrissey wanted, but it was just because they loved being in the Smiths. They knew he was kind of being wacky,
Yeah.
And Johnny Marr took a lot of the heat for it, became basically the manager because it was Maz's preference to not have to deal with an outsider. And it was ridiculous that he was producing all the records, writing the songs, booking vans. You know what I'm saying? Like he was doing the tour managing too. It was
Yeah, that's too
insane.
much.
And so that, as well as some creative differences, namely Morrissey wanting to do a bunch of like Cilla Black covers for some reason, and some they wanted to do a bunch of throwback covers by like girl bands from the 50s, and it didn't resonate with Johnny Marr. So they broke up. I mean, and that was a point when they were like the Beatles. They were at the peak of their game. They had just, I mean, granted, Strange Ways was not Queen is Dead, but it was not as good quite. But they still were firing on all four cylinders and were incredibly accomplished at working together and writing songs together. But then, honestly, it's hard for me to not blame it lay it at Morrissey's feet. But in any case,
so. But they did seem to have more creativity in them. When you come down to Strange Ways was a little bit thin, but it's still really good.
Yeah, it's still really good. Exactly.
And Morrissey, the early Morrissey solo stuff is just so great, and Joyce played on some of that, and so
and Mickey Rourke and Andy Rourke played on.
Yeah, exactly. It was sad. It was definitely sad that they broke up.
It was sad because it sounds to me when I listen to it like Morrissey's band is often approximating the Smiths, and as talented as they are.
Yeah.
I mean, now they have their own sound, but it's almost like they have to work to define themselves as not sounding like the Smiths.
And Johnny Marr trying to be a singer, I'm sorry, I don't roll with that.
Yeah, but you know what? I still would go see him play, ballers. Like if you see Marr like concert clips, he'll play How Soon Is Now and he'll sing it.
Yeah. That's where we differ though. I can't go there.
But all that said, me and Mrs. Ball saw Morrissey perform last week in Atlanta.
That's right. I saw you post that.
I posted the How Soon Is Now video, which I actually made a members only video. I'm going to make a members section for my site. I know. Isn't that crazy?
I saw him years ago. He was fantastic back in the day, in the 90s. Absolutely.
He was good, man. He still can sing. It was interesting, though. He played, we'll go on to the next band in a second, ballers, but he played like this video before he went on instead of having an opening act. And it was like a half hour of videos or 40 minutes of music videos unedited. It looked like he just put a YouTube playlist on. They weren't even like they weren't even like aspects ratio coordinated with the screen or anything. It was kind of lame, but in any case, all right. Yeah, the Smiths. Yes. Yeah, Yo-Ya. What? Oh, Yo-Ya got some records.
That's fine.
Um,
Yeah, Yo-Yo got a nice stack from his uncle.
yeah,
That's
Cure,
awesome.
Talking Heads, The Clash, English Beat. That's awesome, Yo-Yo. Wow.
Your uncle's
Your
cool.
uncle's a cool dude. Yeah. Those are great records. Yes, Paper Bag Man. Mar is also one of my favorite guitar players. He's incredible.
He did some great stuff before he set out on a solo career, like with Brian Ferry. That was
mhm.
cool hearing that.
And there is a video. If you're a Smiths fan, yeah, I do still like Morrissey too. Paper Bag Man. There's a Smiths video of them playing "Some Girls Are Bigger Than Others" in the '80s, and
Mm.
the video quality is cruddy. It's like a balcony far away for the camcorder,
Mm.
but somehow the audio is incredible.
Hmm.
So I highly recommend it. I'll put a link in the description after the video, after if I remember to. But let's go to the next
Cool.
band.
Yes.
Hi, Sheriffs of Blue. Tell me about this band.
So High Sheriffs of Blue are still fairly unknown. I'm holding here in my hands their complete discography. It's 2.5 singles and one 12-inch. I know it looks weird with the backdrop, but I did just want to say that they put out these records. There's somebody I discovered around 1980, 79, 80, and I'd go see them in clubs and buy these singles. They were just fantastic. They were pioneers of a kind of punk, country, blues, noise, art rock that, from my ears, led into the next 2 decades with things like Wilco and the White Stripes. So the thing about it was that I got to be a little bit friendly with the leader, who's that guy with the glasses on, who's kind of giving you that look, Mark Dagley. And I would go to the shows, and it was so great. And then when they put out the 12-inch, there was a sense that they could go on to bigger things. The production was a little clearer, the band was a little tighter, songs a little more accessible, because the early singles, they're just fantastic, but they sound like they're falling down the stairs while they're playing.
Right,
I mean,
right.
it's and the idea that by 1980, the idea that you could play the blues without any technical virtuosity was not happening. Nobody thought
Right,
that for them.
right.
They were bringing back a more spirit of country and blues where, somebody could be a hobo, or, somebody that's being recorded in a field recording. So
Yeah, right. The raw.
yeah, and they came from Boston, and there was a band called Girls that was produced by the guy from Pere Ubu. There were all these threads that seemed to lead to them becoming something big. And then they vanished. And I started asking around, what happened to High Sheriffs? They haven't gigged in a while. They haven't put any records out. And the word I got was that Mark Dagley had decided to become a painter and joined an ashram.
Wow.
So he went off to find himself and left High Sheriffs of Blue fans completely high and dry.
That's the lead singer.
And I've been thinking about them because I was just at the WFMU record fair last weekend, and I found this compilation that Feeding Tube Records put out called Mark Dagley 1978 to 2016. Has one High Sheriffs of Blue song on it, and the rest are all these awesome experiments with zithers and tape, cut up tape. And I mean, he really is a talented guy, so talented. But for me, I felt like I had found this thing that was all my own. Nobody told me to go see them. You know what I mean? And then they just vanished. And everybody I would ask about them, nobody ever heard of them. I mean, there were other people at the gigs. I just don't know what happened. So a few years ago, I posted a thing called High Sheriffs Lo-Fi. Actually, almost a decade ago, I wrote this because Feeding Tube also put out a great High Sheriffs album called NYC 1980, which has nothing that's on any of these records I just showed you. It's all other stuff. So it still feels like there's an elusive, there's a part of the story that's not quite getting told in today's world. But I just told a friend about them the other day, and he tried it, and he was like, oh my God, where has this been all my life? This is so great. So the idea that people can still discover them because of their few recordings is fantastic. But I still felt like, now what am I going to do? Now who's my band?
Yes, that is.
They literally lasted, I think, from 79 to 81 or something like that.
Captain Love Handle says it's my kind of band. I hear you, Captain Love Handle. So this is a very cool that you're. It's giving us a good recommendation. And what's up, Ghostbusters Quick Response Unit? Are you getting ready for Halloween, Ghostbusters Quick Response Unit?
Paper Bag Man's heard of them before. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Really?
Here's something that's really funny. So I'm buying the Dagley record from the WFMU table, and at the fair, and the guy, when I showed it to him, and it was like $6 or something, the guy looks at me and he goes, "You look like you know what you're buying." And I said, "I think I'm the world's only High Sheriffs of Blue stan." And this guy was there. He had never even heard of High Sheriffs of Blue, and he was like 10 years older than me. So I don't know.
Oh, wow. That's cool, man. All right, let's move on to our next band. Hold on a second here.
R.I.P. High Sheriffs of Blue.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see here. All right, Talking Heads.
Talking Heads.
And here's one that is and I have Chris's book, which I've kind of skimmed. I have to read it properly. I will eventually do a video. I have begged 3 of the 4 members of the Talking Heads. Don't get mad at me, viewers. To be on the show, and they're not buying it. They're not picking up what I'm putting down.
Well, now they're on a little victory lap on the talk shows and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. They have bigger venues. But that said, I think from looking at his book that basically David decided independently that he was going to embark on a solo career, and he began doing it without even telling the rest of the band members that this was happening. I know, ballers. I don't know, if you guys have more detail on that, but basically, and I've heard Chris interviewed about this and stuff. Their drummer,
Chris Francis.
And yes, and he, basically is like surprised now. I mean, I think he's come through and he's sort of come to terms with it in a sense. He doesn't seem super bitter, but he also is kind of like WTF, rightly so. But apparently they're coming back together again now to do at least some shows. They have a show. Did they play this week on TV or something?
Well, they were supposed to be on Colbert, but then Colbert got COVID. So
that's what happened. Okay.
Yeah, I think there were pictures. They were literally in the green room, ready to go. And
were they going to actually perform?
That's what I don't know, because at the film festival they just talked.
Right.
So I don't really know, but they look happy together, which in itself is a nice thing to see.
Yes. I love David Byrne, and I understand that he's maybe neurodivergent in some ways, which
I think he's come to terms with that. And I think they reconciled a little bit, at least. I remember at the time, the thing that was odd about that is that he seemed to be able to do his solo pursuits while in the band. I mean, he made the Catherine Wheel with Twyla Tharp, and he did the knee plays for, who was that for? Robert Ashley or something? I can't remember who.
Yeah.
He was able to go off and do his own thing in the context of, or My Life in the Bush of Ghosts with Eno. There were no other.
Yeah, he did a lot of cool. There were a lot of cool spinoffs in addition to his solo work, which is also
and they were also just one of the greatest live bands. So once you take that out of the equation, it was upsetting. Granted, their last few albums, I mean, Naked was pretty good. True Stories was terrible. I Still Want My Money Back.
True Stories has a few moments on it, but
I think it has one good song on it, as far as I can tell.
But also, Naked is great. Come on.
Naked is good, but it always felt a little bit like, okay, now we're going to try and be the Talking Heads again, and we're going to. So it didn't feel as organic as something like Remain in Light.
Well, and then Ray Momo is a work of genius to me, his first solo record, which followed Naked.
The only thing I really like by him post Talking Heads is the one he made with Eno. That one,
the Bush of Ghosts.
What's that?
My Life in the Bush of Ghosts.
No, that was way before. That was before Remain in Light. They made an album together where Eno made tracks. Burns sent him vocals, and then they just kind of put them together. I don't think they were ever together, but it's a
Right.
really good album. It's kind of in that period when Eno was working with John Cale. He was kind of putting out these more pop-like albums. Strange Overtones was the single.
Oh, cool.
You don't remember
What's
this
the name of
album?
What's the name of the album?
Everything That Happens Will Happen Today.
Oh, okay. I somehow don't remember that.
Yeah.
Epsilon Omega
Oh,
5 says I
it's
like it. I
so
love
good.
them too.
It's
I
like
love them too, Epsilon Omega.
it's over
Sorry.
10 years old now.
Yes, there's some. You're right, Love Handles. They're celebrating the documentary anniversary and promoting it. Hopefully, that includes. But I I assume maybe not.
Yeah, this was 10,000. This was 2008. Everything That Happens Will Happen Today. Definitely check it out. It's a great album. That's my favorite Burn thing after Talking Heads.
Yeah, so Captain Love Handles says he saw them on 2 shows a couple weeks ago, but they were not performing music. It sounds like Captain, just interviews.
That would be something if they performed, though.
Yeah, David Byrne is great too for me too. I saw him play live once, which was great in Boston. It was really cool. All right, let's move on to our.
I was just going to say, I watched his tour with everybody on their feet that he did on Broadway.
Yeah,
but I saw it on YouTube when he did it in Brazil, and it was joyous. But then when I watched the Broadway one on Channel 13 on PBS, it was airless. I thought it died. But people were happy. He made people happy. But the Brazil show was something else.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. I
felt it.
I did not get to see that show in New York, but it looked like it was cool. All right, hold on a second. So then we're going to move on to the Police, which is like, it's a similar sort of thing, except for Sting actually stated at one point eventually that he wanted to do a solo career. But while they were recording Synchronicity, if you watch my most recent video, he watch it though, it's good. But he basically was like, the Police are over. These songs are about me, and I'm not going to, and so basically he decided he was going to break up the band while Synchronicity was going on, and it seems like he acted sort of like a jerk in a way to hasten that process, perhaps. And he really was sort of a jerk while they were recording that. I mean, he's also a genius. It's one of the most successful records of the era, and Don't Stand So Close to Me, earns him $2,000 to $5,000 a day in royalties alone, and also was named by BMI like 10 years ago as the most played song in radio ever of all music ever. So Don't Stand So Close to Me is the most played radio. So, he obviously did something right, but they split. I mean, they could not stand the pressure, and it was, like the Beatles and like Talking Heads, they were, well, maybe not like Talking Heads, but they were at the peak of their powers. I mean, I mean, maybe it wasn't sustainable because they were at each other's throats. Like Synchronicity seems like it barely got made.
I pretty much only liked the first couple of albums, but you're absolutely right as far as their studio prowess, their commercial success. They were at the peak. And then they came back in the 2000s and did a world tour and made multi-millions of dollars. So they obviously still have goodwill out there. But
2007, I saw that tour. It was kind of meh,
Really?
It was basically
it was a cash. I felt like their hearts weren't really in it. It was just a cash grab.
It was a cash grab. Like there was no. I saw them at Fenway Park, which Ballers is a horrible place to see a concert. Don't ever see a concert at Fenway Park. You can't even see the band. Not only can you not see the band, you can't see the screen behind the band. You know what I mean? It's like there's just no the sight. It's like there's something about that stadium. The sight lines are like insanely bad. I don't know how they did it. It's like the opposite of a place that has great sight lines. So in any case, but aside from that, Jeremy, it was like there was no love put into it. They played the songs, but they didn't do anything interesting with the set. They didn't try to present anything about the band's history, or there was no heart in it. They just played the songs technically proficiently, and that was it.
Yeah.
There were lights and stuff, but so in any case,
Stuart
the
Copeland
Police.
did some great stuff after the Police. He did the Rumblefish soundtrack.
Yes.
All the TV soundtracks he did, like through the Equalizer, was so cool.
He did a lot of scores for films and stuff like
Yeah,
that
he's
too.
also apparently composed operas. I've never actually heard one, but he's an interesting cat. Very interesting guy.
He has a cool video he did with the BBC, which ballers you can see on YouTube, which is about the origins of drumming in New Orleans. And he talks about a jazz drummer from New Orleans who invented the bass drum pedal.
Oh, wow.
Like, it was like a band, like a marching band in New Orleans, and the guy used a couple pieces of wood and a mallet to create like a bass drum pedal so that he could play it with his foot and do other drums at the same time, and thereby invented drum kits.
So we got heavy metal drummers with the
So it's worth watching. Look that up. I'll try and remember to put that in the. All right, hold on a second.
Got some good comments here.
Oh yeah, let's go to those.
XTC were at their peak. That's true. That was kind of, they were a quartet, and then they were a trio, and then they were gone.
What's up, Barry? Thanks for joining us, man. New baller in the house. The COVID song. Oh, thank you. My Police video is good. I appreciate that, Yo-Ya. I was proud of that one. It hasn't done that well so far, but I have faith that YouTube will eventually see the error of their ways.
I will get to it. I haven't watched it yet.
And yes, blue face smiling. That's funny. Let's see here. Most bands just fall apart Hey, Nito, what's up, man? Most bands just fall apart one member at a time until you're not sure if it's the same band, like a Cure sort of a syndrome. They peel off. Like, it took a while, but or like Susie and the Banshees, where they just couldn't get a drummer to stay, or just couldn't get it to work for any length of time, but somehow that was okay for the bands. I don't know.
Yeah.
It led to them having different eras, sort of,
Yep. We also had all those guitarists, as you talk about in your video.
Yeah, exactly. It was one guitarist after the next for different reasons.
There is no one Susie and the Banshees.
And Paper Bag Man is correct. Bands are a lot of work. It's like
it is very, very true.
It is harder than a marriage.
When I did the Beastie Boys cover stuff at MCA Day with Jim Shearer, I told him, I will do this, but only if you organize everything. Because I had been an organizer in my other bands, and it's not easy.
So did you do what you're talking about at the dedication of Beastie Boys Square recently?
No, this was at MCA Day, like 2016 or 2017.
Right. The first time we met in person.
Yeah, we did a few songs together. He got me back playing the bass for the first time in decades. It was loads of fun.
Yes, that is cool.
I told him, I said, I'm not doing any cat herding.
Yeah, it's super difficult to like every piece of it, and then when you have like a bunch of competing egos, incredibly talented people.
Yeah, especially if you get rich and famous, like these bands we're talking about. Some of them, anyway.
Right? And you get like a Sting figure, Epsilon Omega 5 says, gotta mention Tally Hall. They were a great band, and then Joe Hawley'd all over the place, and the band imploded.
I don't know Tally Hall. I need to check.
I don't either. I've heard the name recently for some reason, but I've
heard the name Joe Hawley, but I don't know Tally Hall.
Yeah,
that's what happens when bands break up.
yeah, exactly. Like we would probably know them.
Stone Roses also mentioned here.
Yeah, Stone
Yeah, that
Roses.
was. Then again, their second album to me was a major fall off from the first one. And then Ian Brown seems to have had quite the solo career. I think we
See,
might have
I'm not.
lost
No,
Dennis.
I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm just behind the picture.
Gotcha.
Um, Husker Du exploded due to mutual hatred. Yeah, you got a bit of that the Misfits are like one of those bands that's like a zombie band. Like you still got the brothers, the Only brothers. If
Yeah.
that's Jerry Only's real last name, Jerry and Wolfgang von Frankenstein. But but they just go through drummers like Kleenex, and obviously they want to punch Danzig's lights out and vice versa. So okay, yes, they did explode. Oscar do. Yeah, it's not for me right now. Yeah, it's hard. That's why the Dennis Ball show is kind of a solo operation, except for
Mm.
Jeremy helps me out because it's
That
hard,
was
man. You gotta kind of. Yo-Yo wants to start a band. You can't even agree on a band name. I love your little icon, Yo-Yo 420. It's cool. It's
that's
a little
funny.
pregnant Descendants lady. I love that. All right, let's move on to the next band because this is one that I
Yep.
really want to hear about. Palm.
Palm. So Palm started not that long ago, 2012, so about 10 years ago. And I'm trying to remember how I found them. I think it might have been one of those Spotify discovery things where if you like this, you'll like that. And maybe they ended up in my release radar or my Discover Weekly or something. As soon as I heard it, I was like, what is this? This is so good. They use a lot of like different like competing rhythms and this kind of shiny keyboard textures, a lot of guitars played through keyboards. They do have a little bit of a talking heads sometimes, the way things kind of chatter together
Yep.
rhythmically. The lyrics are pretty oblique. And then
It's
I got to see them
it's
live at a club called Market Hotel. And it was one of the best live shows of the century so far. They were just so great that, it was really cool because they come out, they set up all their stuff, they seemed to be ready to play, and then they walked off the stage. And it was just like, so then when they
wow.
came back out and they launched into the first song, the crowd was so ready. It was a great little touch. Four members: Eve Alpert, Casper Kurt, Herasimos Livitsanos, and Hugo Stanley. Incredibly talented musicians. Hugo Stanley's the drummer. He could
Yep.
be in a classical ensemble. He's that good. Super precise, but definitely gets in the groove. I just thought they were fantastic. And they put out their first album was a little rough, but their second album from 2018 was called Rock Island. One of the great albums of that year. I had that thing on repeat. It was so good. And then last year they put out another one. They got on Saddle Creek Records, which is a little bigger label, called Nicks and Grazes. It was much the same, but just a little bit more candy colored and joyous. I thought it was more accessible. And the next thing you know, they just announced on Instagram, Palm is ending. They put up a thing, Palm is ending. We're playing these last dates, and then we're done.
Did
They haven't said.
they just announced it?
This was earlier this year, June 2023.
Damn.
So I was lucky because I got to see one of those last concerts. They played at something called the Outline Festival at Knockdown Center out in Queens.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because the crowd was packed. It was a festival, so there were 8 other bands that day, but there were people who missed the bands outside so they could have their position for the Palm show. And I was not one of those people because I really wanted to see the band that was playing right before them, Grace Ives. She's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
We got in there, we wormed our way, we were pretty close to the stage. And the thing that was interesting was they were their usual excellent selves, but they seemed actually surprised by the emotional response from the audience. I think they were blown away. I don't know if it gave them second thoughts, but it seems not. it seems like they really are done. I believe Alpert and Kurt, Eve and Casra have their own thing called Casra Crut or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I need to get more into that and keep track of them. You know, sometimes you have to keep track of individual members as they move on. Like, I don't know if you remember this band Perfect Pussy with Meredith Graves.
Mm-mm.
Really good band. So the drummer in Perfect Pussy is now the drummer in Empath, another great Philly art rock band who has not broken up, thank goodness. But it just came so suddenly, and they didn't make any explanations or give any interviews that I know of. So
yeah, so you just have to kind of, it's
we don't know what
unresolved.
Yeah, exactly. It sort of felt like, also they put out 3 albums, a bunch of singles. It just seemed like there was more territory to mine there, more gold to dig out of their sound. So, you know, what are you going to do?
Well, nothing but move on to the next band and mention that
Yeah,
there's all
and
this.
you know, it's just you get invested in these bands and then they're not doing it anymore, and it's once again it's that primal wound hits again.
Speaking of new bands, these guys in the chat are talking about how band names, basically band names are a thing, and like there's bots that can make your band name. There's bots that can make your band.
Yo-Ya, I'm not so sure about I'm not so sure about Yo-Ya's band names, to be honest.
Well, we can group. Maybe we can have a live stream where we talk about.
Well, you know, also I think the thing is when you make a band name, you should sometimes consider how are people going to find you. You know, even the name Palm isn't so easy to find unless you have to put in Palm the band or something like that.
Right, exactly.
And then there's bands where their name is so similar to another band, you wonder, do they think
how do you?
You know,
right.
So I think of something that's distinctive, that's easy to search for. Like the band, there's a band called Uni, UNI, which is Charlotte Kemp Mull, who used to be in Ghost of a Saber-Toothed Tiger with Sean Lennon. Maybe they're still together as a couple, but I don't know if that band will ever come back. But they had to change their name to Uni and the Urchin because nobody could find UNI. It was impossible.
Yeah, because it's probably the name of 16 different universities, and then it's like when you search Uni band, it's like their marching band comes up or something.
And think about how hard it is to find things on Spotify that you know are there. So, you know, you got to consider these things. You want people to be able to find you. So those names are memorable, Yo-Ya, I will say that, but they just, you know, one of those things where in certain venues they won't fly.
Yeah, it has to be like I was like the Dennis Ball show. Even that, there's like a politician named Dennis Ball. Luckily, he's a failure. He's like he's like a Tea Party guy.
Dennis Ball for president.
Yeah, and like, you know, there's other guys named Dennis Ball that are just like golfers and things like that. And then there was a criminal named Dennis Ball that came up. It was like a driving around in a stolen car, crashing into things. And it was in the news. I posted about it. All right, let's move on because Mrs. Ball's downstairs.
Yep. Farewell,
she wants to see me. But we have, hold on a second.
Listen to their records last forever. Listen to them.
So yeah, speaking of, well, not speaking of yet, but the Sex Pistols.
Well, I just thought of this at the end of when we were talking about what to do, and I was thinking the Sex Pistols have the greatest breakup of all time. They broke up on stage with Johnny Rotten saying that famous line, "Do you ever get the feeling you've been cheated?"
Really?
Makes the whole thing worthwhile.
They broke up. All right, I'm an idiot. They broke up on stage?
Essentially, yeah. They were playing at Winterland. They were on their U.S. tour. You know, they'd gone through Texas and all that mess. They were playing Winterland, and things were just terrible because Malcolm McLaren kept putting his, you know, thoughts into other people's ears, like, "Oh, you guys should be solo. Let's all do something together without Johnny." And, you know, he was trying to shear people off from the band. And then there's also the problem that Sid Vicious wasn't really a musician.
Yeah.
You know, if you listen to the Sex Pistols album, which is fantastic, there's very good musicianship on that album.
And it's not
Sid. And Sid Vicious could not play bass. It's unfortunate, but he really couldn't get it together. And for them to continue, I don't know how they would have continued anyway. It was kind of a cul-de-sac, dead end kind of band. So, but yeah, they were playing and they played a short set. I actually have you remember the Lost Leaders? You'd send in a coupon from a record for $2
Yeah.
and you get a double album of samples, like
Yeah.
samples from that label.
Yeah.
And so there was one called Troublemakers, which was around 1980 or so, or 79. And they actually had the track from Winterland where Johnny Rotten says, "Do you ever get the feeling you've been cheated?" I made sure to get that record just so I could have that.
Oh, that's great. That's cool.
Yeah. So then they never played together again until there was that Cash Grab reunion.
Yeah. Well, this great Rock and Roll Swindle album, which was,
well, there was that, but I mean,
the soundtrack to a movie that they were barely in, right? Yeah. And then they were barely on the soundtrack. It was a swindle.
Yeah, and all that stuff where they are on the soundtrack, I think was recorded before Nevermind the Bollocks.
Right.
I can't remember like exactly.
Random stuff so that they could try and
then again we got Public Image Limited, which was
right
for the first few albums there, and their latest album is actually really good. This World Over, or I think it's called.
Oh, really? They have a latest album? No.
Public Image? Yeah. Oh, End of World it's called. So good.
Johnny Rotten was on The Masked Singer. I didn't know that, Captain Love Handles.
He's a character and a half. But yeah, the Sex Pistols, that was classic. You know who else broke up on stage?
Who's that?
The band that opened for the Young Aborigines at one of our only 2 shows.
Oh,
they had musical differences right in front of us and they left.
Oh man, that's rough.
So it can happen.
Yes. All right. Oh yeah. Possum Kingdom Ramblers is Captain Love Handle's band is playing at the ukulele festival.
Well, that's Captain Love Handle's band. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Well, he's Captain Love Handle's is close friends with the members of that band. Captain Love Handles is usually spends a lot of time flying around the universe, spreading love and hugs, but and art lessons, but is friends with ukulele players throughout the galaxy, and Possum Kingdom Ramblers is playing a ukulele festival tomorrow. Captain Love Handles, can you put some information in the comments so that I can display it on screen if anyone wants to go to it? It's I don't have the information here. And then we'll on that note, we'll listen to Possum Kingdom Ramblers and say good night.
Farewell, and may your favorite band not break up.
Yeah, exactly. Here, I'm gonna play the song, and Captain Love Handles is gonna give us information about it. Thank you guys. Have a great evening. Jeremy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
And peace out. Hold on a second here. Let me do this thing.